Greetings everyone and welcome to this session on management of fractured teeth from an endodontist perspective. Whenever a patient with a fractured tooth walks in, the main aim is to restore the tooth function as well as aesthetics. But there are so many other factors which influence our treatment decision and the ultimate success of the treatment. And these include whether we are able to isolate the dentin and endodontic filling materials from microleakage, the integrity of the restored tooth, whether we are able to preserve and maintain the biological bit, the patient accepts our treatment plan and continues with the counseling which we have given, and of course, the cost. Now, for a fractured tooth, it is not always absolutely necessary to give a post. The treatment may be a simple reattachment or even a composite restoration. So, how do we decide what restoration is required for this particular tooth? This depends upon the factors. Think and answer. What is the main factor which determines the type of restoration for endodontically treated tooth? If you have guessed that it is the extent of coronal destruction and the type of the tooth, you are absolutely right. Answering the question when to restore, when to crown, and when to post and crown is the number of walls which remain once you have finished the root canal treatment. If you have 1 to 3 walls remaining, an adhesive restoration is sufficient. If the walls are lesser, only 1, then a fiber or a metal post is indicated along with a crown. Whereas when there are no walls remaining, a custom cast post would be a better indication. Coming over to the must-knows of endodontic posts. A post is meant to retain the core and in turn support the crown. It is not meant to bear the entire occlusal load. Therefore, the purpose of a post is to retain the core, thereby replacing the missing coronal tooth structure. And secondarily, it also reinforces the remaining tooth structure. So when would you indicate a post? There should be inadequate tooth structure to support the core. And there should be sufficient root length so that there is adequate apical seal remaining when you are placing the post inside the root canal. Depending upon the clinical situation and the amount of remaining tooth structure, you can decide whether this tooth can be given a post. And on the right side, as you can see, there is caries intraradicularly in the canine and a vertical fracture in the molar. Therefore, these cannot be restored. There are 4 broad topics under which I'm going to discuss endodontic posts. And first, let us start with the tooth preparation considerations. A minimum of 2 mm of coronal tooth structure is required because this is what is going to give us the ferrule. If you have more than 4 mm of tooth structure remaining, you can go ahead, give a core and crown. A post will not be indicated. Now, what to do if there is less than 2 mm of tooth structure remaining? If you don't give a ferrule, then this will result in occlusal stresses which can cause wedging forces. The ferrule actually acts as a positive stop and disperses the forces onto the periodontal ligament. But remember, when you have less than 2 mm and try to give a ferrule, it will encroach on the biological width, resulting in attachment loss. Now look at this case. There is inadequate tooth structure remaining to give us a 2 mm ferrule. So what should we do? Should we extract? Let us look at the radiograph. There is still enough tooth structure which may be hiding inside the soft tissue and bone. Now, how do I take out this tooth structure? There are 2 methods. One is crown lengthening, where I surgically expose the soft tissue and hard tissue or the alveolar crestal bone to expose more tooth structure, or I extrude the tooth out of its socket using orthodontic forces. Now, what is the difference between orthodontic extrusion and crown lengthening? Have a look at this image. Here, the orthodontic extrusion has resulted in decrease in the root length. But because the crestal bone height is maintained at the same level, the crown length has also remained the same. Therefore, this has resulted in a favorable crown root ratio. Whereas in case of crown lengthening, the root has been exposed because of reduction in the bone height. And here also the root length has decreased, but crown length has increased, resulting in a unfavorable crown root ratio. Therefore, in cases of very long crowns, it is better to go for orthodontic extrusion. There is another way, which is called atraumatic surgical extrusion. In this case, you are teasing out the tooth out of its socket using elevators and forceps, trying to be as atraumatic as possible. Initially, loosening the tooth in the socket with the help of elevators and gently teasing out with the help of forceps, akin to a luxation. And after that, we can splint the tooth, and once the tooth is stabilized, we can give a post and a crown. The next question is how much, how, and when to remove the GP. Many people ask whether the GP should be removed immediately or within 1 week. Many studies have shown there is no difference, but remember, the sealer should have adequately set, and whichever method you're using, it should not affect the apical seal. So if you're trying to remove the GP immediately after obturation, in that case, it is better to go for a thermal method of removal of GP. Now, how much of GP should be removed? You can remove how much ever you want, but what should remain behind is important. At least 4 millimeter of GP should remain apically for an adequate apical seal. However, because there can be foreshortening of the radiograph, 5 millimeter is the safety margin. And as to how, we can use Gates Glidden drills and piezo reamers to mechanically remove GP and heated pluggers to thermally remove GP. A chemical method is usually not indicated unless and until you are not able to remove the GP is so hard that you are not able to remove mechanically or thermally. Let us come to procedural considerations. For a post to be successful, you should have an adequate apical seal. If it is disturbed, the entire assembly goes for a toss. Remember, minimal canal enlargement so that there is enough strength remaining in the radicular dentin. Adequate post length. Otherwise, this will not only result in poor retention, this may also cause more stress concentration. A positive horizontal stop, the ferrule, resulting in good forces which prevent wedging effects, anti-rotation feature, and extension of the final restoration margin onto sound tooth structure or the ferrule. Now let us see this image. The patient has allegedly got a post within the canal. Do you think this is an adequate post in terms of diameter or length? Is it actually serving any function being there? When you have a shorter post, there is more stress concentration, and during shearing forces, there are more forces dissipated in the radicular portion, resulting in fracture of the roots. Therefore, within physiologic limits, a longer post is always considered better. When you compare adhesive and non-adhesive cementation, for adhesive cementation, we must have at least 1/3 to 1/2 of the length of the canal for post length, whereas for non-adhesive cementation, the post should be 2/3 the length of the canal. Other features are that from the alveolar crest, the post should extend at least 4 mm apically, and in case of a posterior tooth, should not extend more than 7 mm into the root canal space. The diameter of the post is very important. If it is too narrow, this will result either in fracture of the post if it's a fiber post, or flexion of the post if it's a metal post. If it is too wide, this is at the expense of the radicular dentin. This will result in fracture of the root because there is no strength remaining in the dentin which has been left behind. Now, how do we decide which is the adequate post diameter? There are three principles which govern this decision. The first is the conservationist principle, which says minimal preparation of the root canal space. In cases of maxillary anteriors or canals which are very wide, this principle can be followed. This will result in minimal loss of dentin while maintaining adequate post diameter. The preservationist principle says that you should have at least 1 mm of dentin surrounding the post space preparation, while the proportionist principle says that the proportion of the radicular dentin surrounding the post space should be 1/3 on both the sides. The post diameter is maximum for maxillary central incisor, which is 1.7 mm, and minimum for the mandibular anteriors, which is around 0.7 mm. There are different classifications of the post. The simplest one is the one given by Walton and Torabinejad. And I'm going to be discussing only the classification of construction, that is custom made and preformed. Now, in preformed posts, the most preferred ones and the most popular ones are fiber reinforced posts. If you see this table, the reason will be obvious to you. It's because the modulus of elasticity of these fiber posts is similar to that of the dentin. Now, this results in similar flexion of the post when the tooth is also under flexion. Therefore, there is minimal debonding occurring. When is a custom post indicated? Probably the most important reason for a custom post to be given is when you are planning to change the angulation of the core in relation to the post. In case of protruded teeth or rotated teeth, and when you're planning to give multiple cores in the same arch, probably for an FPD. In that case, you may require a single path of withdrawal. Therefore, there may be slight changes in the angulation of the core. The other indications are small teeth such as mandibular anteriors, because a cast post definitely has more strength, and oval canals. The advantage of a custom cast post is very obvious. It results in preservation of the tooth structure, providing anti-rotational properties. But the disadvantage is the number of appointments. You need to give 2 appointments, first for pattern fabrication and the second for the placement and cementation of the post and core. And therefore, you need to give a temporization in between appointments. Whether you're using the direct technique or indirect technique, it requires 2 appointments. Here is an interesting case where the tooth was protruded, fractured, and there was slight rotation of the teeth also. So both for 1-1 and 2-1, they were crowned. 2-1 was given a post with slight with the change in angulation of the core, and finally crowned, which resulted in acceptable aesthetics. When we plan to give post, the first thing which occurs to us is fiber post, because it's a single appointment procedure. You can easily cement it. There are different sizes which are available, and it is good in aesthetics. So we can give it under an all ceramic crown also. However, we have to prepare the canal to accept the type of the post which you are giving. One more advantage of the fiber post is that it results in more favorable distribution of forces into the radicular dentin compared to the metal posts. When we are planning to give a fiber post, we must have adequate dentin present in the cervical region, because the flexural strength should be flexion of the post should be supported by the dentin surrounding the post. If there is inadequate dentin, this will result in excessive flexure of the post due to shearing forces, and result in debonding, because of which there will be coronal leakage occurring. Whichever post you are planning to cement, the canal should be thoroughly cleaned before placement of the cement. So the suggested steps are to use 17% EDTA followed by sodium hypochlorite, and then thoroughly rinsing with saline and drying. The luting cement should be uniformly coated in the canal, preferably with a lentulospiral. The adhesive resin cements are used for fiber posts, and the other cements, that is zinc phosphate, polycarboxylate, and GIC, are other options available when we are planning to cement metal posts and custom cast posts. Remember, when you are inserting the post within the canal, it should be gently placed within the canal to avoid hydrostatic pressure, which would result in wedging forces. Now, special considerations and newer developments will go hand in hand, because it's because of special considerations that newer development occur. Now, here there is an anatomic post fabrication, where on top of the prefabricated fiber post, a coating of resin cement was placed and cured without bonding to the canal and taken out. And later, this was cemented within the canal, and a crown was finally placed. So in case you have wide canals or oval canals, an anatomic post preparation is a good option. Now, if you don't want to go for that, there are other options available, which I'll be discussing later. A brief note on coronaradicular core. When there is a curved large canal, like in a mandibular molar, where, or because of some other reason you are not able to extend the post entirely into the root canal, we can plan to extend the core into the 2 to 4 millimeter of the root to obtain some amount of retention. And this coronaradicular core is retained by a combination of divergence of the canals in the multi-rooted teeth and the undercuts in the pulp chamber, and of course adhesion with the resin cement. Zirconia posts are considered newer developments. However, because they are fragile, fracture easily, and also result in catastrophic root fractures, they are not very popular. An ever-stick post is an adaptable post. So when you have a slightly curved root canal or an oval root canal, you can try using this ever-stick post. Here is a short video which demonstrates how an ever-stick post can be adapted to the canal. As you can see, it's very sticky. Once you place, after preparing the canal, you can place it and cut the required length of the post simply with the help of scissors. And since this is a oval canal, additional space can be created adjacent to this post with the help of a probe or a plugger. and an extra post can be inserted there. Once the Everstick post is adapted well, it can be taken out, cement placed within the canal, this Everstick post placed, and everything cured together. And this results in very good, once the post hardens, it has very good flexural strength. Another option for wide or flared canals is an accessory post. This is just similar to the lateral condensation technique for Gattaparcha. You actually place the main post within the canal, and for the remaining post space, you can add one or two of these accessory posts. It is available in the brand name Fibercone. Another way of using the Fibercone or the accessory post is when you have extremely flared, ovoid, or figure of 8 canals. In posteriors, for the smaller canals, when this accessory post is placed in the smaller canal, it can result in increased retention and anti-rotational security to the post and core. So, to summarize, I have discussed the indications of post, and based upon availability of tooth structure to give us adequate ferrule, we can obtain adequate ferrule in badly broken down teeth using crown lengthening, orthodontic extrusion, or atraumatic surgical extrusion. And for tooth preparation, we have discussed GP removal, tooth height, and ferrule. The procedural considerations are post dimensions, type of post, luting agent. Special considerations and newer developments for oval canals using Everstick posts and Fibercone. I would like to thank Dr. Ilavenal, Dr. Gayatri, Dr. Pujita, and Dr. Jayashree from my college for helping me in this presentation, and Dr. Sunil Kumar for suggesting my name, and Dr. Prakash and the entire ISPRP team for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much, and have a nice day.